Today's lesson is the magical sport of mermaiding. Hi, everybody. My name is Roger.
And I'm Candice.
Now, Candice, I know what a mermaid is. It's a woman with a fish's tail. And, of course, The Little Mermaid is a famous story that Disney made into a film. So I know what a mermaid is, but I'm not quite sure what mermaiding is. Is that a new kind of sport or something?
Yeah, I think from what I've read, it's only been declared a sport since early 2000s, but it's been coming on for a while now, and it's actually quite a strenuous sport because you have to swim in a mermaid's tail. So you can't use your legs. You have to use your whole body and move it like a dolphin.
Interesting. That sort of sounds like a performance I saw many years ago in Ocean Park in Hualien. If you don't know what mermaiding is, this is the lesson for you. That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson and find out what mermaiding is all about.
The magical sport of mermaiding. Imagine yourself swimming in the ocean near a school of curious fish. The sun's rays glitter through the water. You spot a dolphin. You look down, but where your legs should be, you see a mermaid's tail. It might sound impossible, but it's not. In fact, more and more people every day are taking part in a sport called mermaiding, which involves swimming while wearing a costume mermaid tail.
大家好，第一部分我们看到单字 involve 这个字是动词，意思是包含、需要或是涉及、牵涉。例如 Frank's exercise plan involves a total of 70 minutes of running and swimming. Frank 的运动计划包含合计70分钟的跑步和游泳。或是 Testing the vaccine will start with a small trial of just a few hundred people. 测试疫苗的一开始会包含对数百人所做的小型测试。
Okay, so we introduced this topic by asking you to imagine yourself swimming in the ocean near a school of curious fish. Now, for groups of animals, we have various measure words. It might be kind of confusing because there are so many of them. Let's see, we've got a pack of wolves, a pod of whales, a flock of sheep or a flock of seagulls, and we also have a school of fish. That just means a whole bunch of fish together in the ocean.
Yeah, we've got a lot of interesting collective nouns. Some of them are really difficult to remember, but you've mentioned the most common ones. A flock, a herd, a group or a pack. When we talk about bees, for example, we'll talk about a swarm of bees. When we talk about prisoners, for example, we'll say a gang of prisoners. And one that was really interesting to me is also a shrewdness of apes. But of course, in this article, we're talking about the ocean. So we're talking about a school of fish. When I first heard that as a child, I used to think that the fish went to classes. But of course, they don't go to class. We just call them a school because there are so many of them. Like students, there are so many of them.
So yes, indeed, you can imagine yourself swimming in the ocean and you're near a large group of fish or a school of fish, and the sun's rays glitter through the water. Now, this happens oftentimes when you're swimming in the ocean. You can see the sun's rays glittering through the water. And here we've got the word glitter. It can be both a noun and a verb. In this case, it just means there's a lot of bright light and it is shimmering, it's reflected, it's flashing all over the place. That's the effect you get when light, especially sunlight, shines through water.
Yeah, lots of other words that could be similar to glitter, things like sparkle or shine or glisten when we talk about water. So it's just the light reflecting on the water that has that effect. And also certain things like gold and diamonds glitter. But on the ocean, you could possibly spot a dolphin. So the next sentence goes on to read, you spot a dolphin, you sight a dolphin, or you see a dolphin. And the next stage is you look down, but where your legs should be, you see a mermaid's tail. So she's building the story here. You're imagining yourself swimming in the ocean near a school of curious fish, and you have to imagine the sun's rays glittering through the water. And then the next thing that you see is a dolphin swims into view. You then imagine yourself to be a mermaid. This is taking you quite out of reality. This is taking us into fantasy land.
Well, it might sound impossible, but it's not. In fact, more and more people every day are taking part in a sport called mermaiding, which involves swimming while wearing a costume, mermaid tail. So if you take part in something, you participate in a particular activity. In this case, you're taking part in a sport, and that sport is called mermaiding. And what does it involve? What does it include? What do you have to do in order to be doing mermaiding? Well, you need to swim while you're wearing a costume mermaid tail. It's kind of interesting here. The word costume is serving as an adjective, a mermaid tail that is part of your costume. Costume, of course, is a special set of clothes to make you play a certain role. You'll wear a costume if you act in a play, for example, or if you go to a Halloween party, you might dress up as a ghost or something. You might wear a pirate costume or something like that. All right, let's move on now to the next part. Let's listen to the second part, and we'll continue to talk about mermaiding.
Mermaiding can be traced back to the early 1900s, when the Australian swimmer and film star Annette Kellerman performed as a mermaid in numerous public exhibitions and films. Mermaiding continued to be featured in various films over the decades, before becoming a more widely practiced hobby and profession in the early 2000s, when images shared on social media helped spur its popularity.
第二部分我们看到单字 profession， 这个字是名词，意思是需要高等教育或训练的职业，像是 like many professions, becoming a doctor takes a lot of hard work。 就像许多职业一样，成为一名医生需要付出很多努力。又或者说 Amanda's father is a businessman, but she says that she will choose a different profession. Amanda 的爸爸是个商人，但他说他会选择不同的职业。另外，这个字的形容词是 professional， P-R-O-F-E-S-S-I-O-N-A-L professional， 指的是专业的或是职业的。举例来说 We run this business in a professional manner. 我们以专业的态度来经营这笔生意。或是 I turn to my lawyer for some professional advice. 我向我的律师寻求一些专业建议。
Okay, so when did this sport start? Was it within the last couple of years or so? No, it's actually been around for quite some time. Mermaiding can be traced back to the early 1900s when the Australian swimmer and film star Annette Kellerman performed as a mermaid in numerous public exhibitions and films. So mermaiding can be traced back to the early 1900s. So if you trace something back, you follow a trail through history and you try to find out where something started. We use this term trace back if we're talking about something that started many, many years ago, maybe centuries ago, maybe thousands of years ago. In this particular case, it seems to have started in the early 1900s. And we're going down under to Australia. We have a swimmer and film star by the name of Annette Kellerman, and she performed as a mermaid in various public exhibitions and films. So she started to act like a mermaid way back in the early 1900s.
Yeah, Annette Kellerman was also quite popular because she was a great sportswoman and she's quite well known for inventing the female one-piece swimsuit. So at the time when she was swimming in the 1900s, women had to wear quite a lot of pieces of clothing when they went swimming, but she was the one who initiated wearing a one-piece swimsuit. She also tried to swim in various competitions. So she was quite a well-known swimmer and quite a strong swimmer because she attempted to swim over the English Channel a few times. She was unsuccessful, but that also raised her profile, so people got to know who she was because she really challenged herself with swimming, and she would often do these public exhibitions while wearing a mermaid's tail. So she would swim wearing a mermaid's tail. So mermaiding continued to be featured in various films over the decades before becoming a more widely practiced hobby and profession in the early 2000s when images shared on social media helped spur its popularity. So the sport has recently been gaining popularity. And of course, we have always been fascinated by mermaids. I think you can remember quite a few mermaid movies, Splash, and of course, The Little Mermaid, Ariel and The Little Mermaid. There have also been mermaids in movies, huge blockbuster movies like Pirates of the Caribbean, in Peter Pan, even in Harry Potter, there have been some mermaids. So we've been fascinated with them over the years, and they've appeared in various films over the decades. But only recently, really, the sport of mermaiding has become more widely practiced as a hobby. So a lot more people started taking up the sport as a hobby and also as a profession. So the word profession would imply that it's a job. So of course we have some professional athletes who, or sports people who do it as their job, not just as a hobby. And that started happening in the early 2000s. And of course, Roger, as you know, the advent of social media has also popularized a number of things, including mermaiding. So that helped to spur its popularity. When I think of the word spur, I think about cowboys and the spurs on their boots that they use to make the horse move a little bit faster. So if we spur something, we push it forward, we increase its popularity in some way.
Indeed, so social media is quite influential, and people have posted pictures of people dressed up as mermaids or mermen, and people see that and they think, wow, that's cool, I'd like to see such a performance, or I would like to do that as an activity, I would like to practice that as a hobby or as a profession. So of course it has become more popular as a result of social media. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's talk some more about mermaiding in the third and final part.
Nowadays, as restrictions resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic ease, mermaiding is poised to become more popular than ever. Mermaiding schools teach beginners how to put on a tail fin, practice dolphin kicks, and hold their breath underwater. Meanwhile, mermaids and mermen gather to attend mermaiding competitions and conferences around the globe. So, if mermaiding sounds like fun to you, get a tail fin and dive in.
"第三部分我们看到名词 restriction， 它的意思是限制或是规定。例如 Several countries are expected to lift travel restrictions in the near future. 好几个国家预计不久的将来会解除旅游限制。或是 Timmy didn't meet the height restrictions, so he couldn't go on the ride. Timmy 的身高不符合规定，所以不能搭这个游乐设施。另外补充这个字的动词 restrict, R-E-S-T-R-I-C-T, restrict， 它的意思是限制或是约束。举例来说New employees were restricted from accessing the company's computer system for the first 3 months. 新进员工进入公司的前3个月，电脑系统受到限制。又或者说 Usage of the computer system was heavily restricted. 这个电脑系统的使用受到很大程度的限制。最后我们看到名词 competition， 它的意思是竞赛或是竞争。例如 Small businesses have to deal with competition from big brands. 小企业必须应对大品牌的竞争。或者 The school held a singing competition that was open to all students. 学校举办一场歌唱比赛，开放给所有学生参加。另外补充这个字的动词 compete, C-O-M-P-E-T-E, compete. 它的意思是竞争或是比赛，像是 The two basketball players have been competing against each other for years. 那两名篮球员已经彼此竞争了好多年。又或者说 Vincent had to compete with many people to get a role in the play. Vincent 必须与许多人竞争，以获得这部戏中的一个角色。
Okay, so we just talked about the history of mermaiding. It can be traced back to the early 1900s, but nowadays, in current days or in current times, as restrictions resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic ease, mermaiding is poised to become more popular than ever. So, of course, as you know, over the past 2 or 3 years, there have been these nasty COVID restrictions. We have to stay home. We can't travel overseas. We can't go to amusement parks and places like that because there are people all over the place who might have the virus. So we've got these restrictions. But the restrictions are going to ease. We're not going to have these limitations so much. Life should return to normal pretty soon. And as those restrictions ease, mermaiding is poised to become more popular than ever. So if it's poised to happen, that means it's about to happen.
Yes, it's on the brink of happening. And of course, nowadays refers to the present time. So in the present, as opposed to the previous 2 years, these restrictions are being lessened or being removed. So we don't have so many rules that limit activities like swimming or conferences or competitions. So of course, because of social media, it seems that mermaiding might become even more popular than it was prior to COVID-19.
Okay, so of course, if you want to practice mermaiding or participate in this particular activity, you need to go to a mermaiding school. So mermaiding schools teach beginners how to put on a tail fin, practice dolphin kicks, and hold their breath underwater. So these are things you need to do in order to perform mermaiding. You need to put on a tail fin. Of course, fish have fins, these things that stick out from their bodies. At the end, they have a tail. You could also call that a fin. So you need to wear that costume. You also need to kick like a dolphin, which I believe means kicking your legs together at the same time. That might be kind of tricky. You might have to practice that for a while. And you also need to hold your breath underwater. If you hold your breath, you just hold the air inside your lungs, usually when you go underwater.
Right, and that's quite tricky. You have to train your lungs to become really strong because you have to hold your breath for quite a while. So when you go under the surface of the water, underwater, you would have to hold your breath for a while, and you'd be doing these dolphin kicks, which take quite a lot of energy. So that will take some training to do. Meanwhile, mermaids and mermen gather to attend mermaiding competitions and conferences around the globe. So after you get your training, also once you're a skilled mermaid or a skilled merman, you can attend these fun competitions and conferences around the globe, around the world. Of course, a competition is just a race or a contest to test your skills against other people who are are doing something similar. So you can see how fast you can swim with your mermaid tail on in a competition. And of course, at the end of the competition, the winner will get a prize, or he or she will get the glory of being the winner or the runner-up in a contest. And then, of course, there are also all these fun conferences where people with an interest in the sport will gather. So it's a meeting of people who have similar interests, and you can talk about the sport and arrange different activities around the sport.
Maybe you'll discuss how to swim around kelp forests when you're wearing your mermaid costume, or how to avoid being attacked by a hammerhead shark. So if mermaiding sounds like fun to you, get a tail fin and dive in. Interesting there. Dive in usually refers to jumping in water head first, but it also means to start participating in an activity, especially if you do it rather quickly. Hey, dive in and start to participate in this basketball game. But here, you got to get a tail fin and dive right in and start joining these competitions and go to those conferences. It sounds like a lot of fun. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Let's turn things over now to Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始要我们想象自己在一群好奇的鱼附近大海中游泳。好，那么文中它用到 a school of curious fish 来表达一群好奇的鱼。那么 a school of 加名词就是表达一群怎么样怎么样。school 在这边是当计量词。那我们用 a school of 后面呢常常会接 fish、dolphins 等等的海洋动物。那我们就来帮同学们补充一些表示动物群体的单位词。好，在英文里面有许多修饰群体的计量词，那随着对象不同，用到的计量词也会有所不同。好，第一个要介绍的是 swarm， 它是用来表达像蜜蜂啊、蚂蚁等等这一类群聚型的昆虫的一大群哦。所以这个 a swarm of bees 就可以表达一大群蜜蜂， a swarm of ants 一大群蚂蚁。那么第二个介绍的是 cloud， 它可以用来表达在空中集体移动的一群。所以像你也可以用 a cloud of bees 去表达一群蜜蜂，那用 a cloud of flies 一群苍蝇， a cloud of mosquitoes 一群蚊子这样子。再来第三个补充的是 flock F-L-O-C-K， 这可以用来指人群、羊群，或是用来描述鸟啊、鸡啊等等体型比较小的动物群，像 a flock of tourists 一大群的观光客， a flock of birds 一群鸟，A flock of sheep 一群绵羊。那么第四个介绍的是 herd H-E-R-D， 它是用来描述群居的动物，像是牛啊、马、大象、鹿等等，你就可以用 a herd of cattle 一群牛， a herd of deer 一群鹿。那么第五个介绍的是 pack， 这个字通常是用来修饰狼、犬类的，像 a pack of wolves 一群狼， a pack of wild dogs 一群野狗。好，那么在课文第二部分呢，有出现2次 when， 分别是在第一句的 the early 1900s 后面它接了逗号 when the Australian swimmer and film star 怎么样怎么样，然后还有在最后一句的 the early 2000s后面它也是接逗号 when images shared on social media 怎么样怎么样。好，在这两个句子当中啊，我们看到 when 它其实是当关系副词，相当于介系词加上 which， 用来引导关系子句去补充说明表示时间的先行词。那由于先行词是明确的时间点，我们不用再修饰限定它的范围，所以是用非限定用法。也就是说啊 when 引导的关系子句是用来补充说明先行词，那必须用逗号把这个补充说明的关系子句隔开来。举例来说 Mr. Kent retired in 2005 when his son graduated from college. Mr. Kent 在2005年退休，然后我们加一个关系子句来针对2005年做补充说明。那一年呢，他儿子大学毕业。所以呢 when his son graduated from college 这是补充说明，记得用逗号把它跟主要子句隔开来哦。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Involve. Jumping involves springing from a surface using the feet and legs. Costume. The little girl wore costume jewelry while pretending to be a queen. Profession. Being a lawyer is a profession that requires going to law school. Nowadays, jazz music isn't nearly as popular as it once was. Restriction. Many restaurants have restrictions against bringing in outside food and drinks. Competition. Lois practiced every night in order to win the dance competition. Conference. Because of its convenient location, the hotel hosted countless conferences.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Here's our discussion starter for today. The question is, if you could really become a mermaid, would you do it? Why or why not?
I would become a mermaid because they have the ability to hold their breath underwater for a long time, and they get to explore all the mysteries and beauty of the ocean floor.
Interesting. Well, I would not become a mermaid because I'm a man. A mermaid, of course, is female, and if you're a man, you would be a merman. And maybe I could be a superhero like in SpongeBob, the superhero Mermaid Man, and his companion or his sidekick, Barnacle Boy. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I'm Candice.
See you next time.